Welcome, everybody. I'm Rick DiClemente with another issue of Astrology Unplugged. Tonight, we'll be getting back into some astrology. Next week, we will take off since everybody will be full of turkey and dressing. We'll skip that week, and then we go to the 29th, which is when I will have guests on discussing their experiences with ayahuasca. One went to Costa Rica, one had their experience, I believe, in Peru. Anyhow, tonight's subject came to me very suddenly, a difficult subject. It might sound easy, but the more I've given thought to it, it's very difficult. And it's called, okay, that's all right, Elke. We'll know you're listening. Tonight's discussion is about quit looking at your astrology chart like it's a curse, like it's a pain, etc., like it's a scary thing. Now, let me take some time explaining this. This is a very difficult subject. In 1971, when I was in college, Mark is back. I've been wondering where you are. So glad to see you. Welcome back, buddy.
How's it going?
We missed you. Glad to see you. Anyhow, in 1971, I was not an astrologer yet, and a young lady did my chart, and she told me some things about this and that, and she said that I had a grand cross of 4 planets opposite each other, which I do. And she proceeded to scare the hell out of me, doom-saying about how all these negative things were going to happen, etc., etc. And I bet you Marcia Bud knows who that person was. She was married to the man that directed the CAC at the time in 1971. Anyhow, she read the chart, and she told me that I was not very creative. 25 movies later, 105 astrology shows later, I found out she was wrong. And she had interesting things to say, but it showed me how vulnerable you are when you don't know astrology. And I mean, astrologers are vulnerable because you got to know a lot about astrology to know astrology. It's very difficult and very complex. I just happen to have a mixture in my chart where I can let things be and let things kind of be complicated and let them kind of sit there and be a little bit uncertain about them. And I got other parts of the chart that are absolutely certain and secure and strong. So I think that mixture allows me to grow with it and become pretty accurate. It's taken a long time. But anyhow, after 71, it came to be in the later 70s, and I wanted to see, I was always following sun signs, I wanted to see if my chart made sense. So I kept her notes, and I started to teach myself astrology. And in 1978, it became really crystal clear to me that this is what I should do. I can't explain it to you other than that. It just came to me, this was my dharma. But by 78 into 79, once I really started studying, I started to see what she saw and what she misinterpreted. Hello, Flip. So anyhow, I started to see that she should not be reading for anybody. If you're a half-baked astrologer, and there's nothing wrong with that, because a lot of people are half-baked because it takes a whole long time to sit in the oven, then you shouldn't be reading for people. And if you are reading for people and you're not ready to read for people, then you need to be very careful what you're saying and make sure they understand that to take things with a grain of salt. I will take somebody in my office and I'll tell them 9 great things, and I'll tell them one thing that's a little bit lukewarm, and they'll remember one thing that's absolutely horrible.
Turn this off.
Get rid of that.
I'm going to mute everybody. Okay. So that's what happens. And it's very tough to understand how these planets work through us and we don't even understand them. And its society is at blame here because we don't teach it as a legal warranted subject. And it's understandable because there's so many kookaritises out there following up on predictions about when your next boyfriend's going to come around the corner. But anyhow, let's get to the point. there are several things that are misunderstood in astrology. I had a woman I was reading for recently, and I talked about some of the difficulties in the chart, and most of the things in the chart were rather positive, and most charts have a little bit of difficulty, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Challenges, blockages, you might call them. And she said back to me, well, do you read other charts for people that are this horrible? Say how people interpret it? I didn't say anything about horrible. I didn't say anything bad. But we, as a whole, we tend to feel guilty. We tend to think we're inadequate. We tend to think we don't shape up. And we tend to think our problems are really huge because we're also melodramatic, are we not? And I said, well, we're talking about a couple little things in your chart that are little bumps in the road, and they're certainly not what you might call catastrophes. Now, on the other hand, I'm not going to BS you. I'm pretty much a straight shooter. There are some charts that are a mess. You choose your chart. I'm firmly convinced. You sit with your spirit guides in between lives, and you study your past lives, and you choose the exact moment you're going to be born. Well, we're getting a C-section. We didn't pick the time. The doctor picked the time. You didn't pick nothing. The doctor didn't pick nothing. The God picks the time. Period. You can only be born at the split second that you were born. Here's Marcia, a twin, and I guess you're 90 seconds older than your daughter or Annie. What is it?
8 minutes.
Okay. Well, there's no coincidence. It could have been 7 minutes, could have been 5.5. It had to be specifically that. All right. So the point is, your chart is a map of the moment that the universe is in a specific situation that it has never been in before. It will never be in again. Snapshot, there you are, and you are the emissary of that moment. Your chart is exactly where it needs to be. Now, I'm not going to get all philosophical on you yet. Your chart is a map of challenges. What a chart really is a list of a calendar and a map of your readiness. A chart is a map and a calendar of your readiness, when you're going to be ready for this or that. There's only one thing. There's no this and that and these roads and those roads and that roads. There's only one road, and that's the road back to God, because that's the only thing that does exist. Everything else is an illusion, in my opinion. You may get other astrologers that differ, but I think most astrologers agree. What does it mean to have a map back to God? Well, it means a map past the illusion of Rickness, past the illusion of Martianness, Markness, back to the oneness. All right. I'm not going to get all heavy about that tonight. When you look at a chart and you're not educated about charts, you see all these symbols and this complex lines drawn everywhere, you're scared as hell out of you. What's this mean? You have no idea. You have no idea how to evaluate it. And you're very vulnerable to a bad astrologer. And there are only a very small percentage of astrologers that are good. They're getting better. They're definitely improving because they're post-Jung. This is the reason astrologers are getting better. They're post-Carl Jung, who opened the door to archetypes and got us away from formulas and got us into thinking about archetypes and patterns, such as is written by Richard Tarnas. Once we started to follow the archetypes, we're finding a lot of really good astrologers now who are making great advances. We're getting out of the old astrology. Oh, this means that you're going to die on a Ferris wheel. Oh, this means you're going to die because your liver is going to go bad. Oh, this means your dad's going to have a car wreck. This means you're going to have to quit college after your sophomore year. All these hard fixed rules that these old books say. That part of astrology is dying. Some of it remains true. The Hindus are remarkably good at doing predictive astrology on the physical plane, but Western astrology is not very good about doing astrology with concrete terms. In other words, this will happen on Friday. That's why if you've noticed me through the years writing newsletters and on Facebook, I'll tell you this type of thing is brewing. I'm giving you the energy, the archetypal type of thing to watch. Well, if you're at home and you're being irresponsible and you're living with your parents and you're not making an effort to get a job and Saturn's coming your way, what do you think's going to happen? You're going to be out on the road and you're going to be forced to go get a job. But I can't tell you particularly. That's because the person's not picking up the clues to the energy. Now, one of the main things that turns a medza chart into something that's really serious is a couple things. One, orb. When two planets are really close, like 10 degrees opposite 10 degrees, or 10 degrees square 11 degrees, when planets are that tight, it's like a guitar string that's tightened, you are more or less going to have problems with those planets. Doesn't mean you can't wriggle out, but they will present more problems with you. I don't like to see anything close. I don't like to see any planets next to each other close. I don't like to see anything at a right angle that's close. I want a little breathing room, a little play. That seems to allow the personality room to wriggle free and to see beyond it. Because what your real goal is to blend all 12, 10, 12 energies. To be able to mix all your 12 signs together in all your 10, 11 planets. And one of the number one problems in astrology is there's too much identification. What's around your neck? I'm a Capricorn. I got a little ring. I'm a Pisces. It's nothing but ego. There's too much identification with the sun sign. Your sun sign is your main part. When you're in trouble, you will go to your sun sign. That's where your main power, and that's where you should go. When I work with people, I try to ignite that sun sign because that's the main core of the person. But there's too much reliance on it. When you look at the astrological literature, go out to Amazon and type top astrology books. You won't even believe the junk that's out there. The first 100 books, the first 30 will be about sex. Some are about comics, some are about reading numbers, some are about reading bumps on your head, some are about ghosts. I mean, what they call astrology, it's just ridiculous. But anyhow, the whole thing is getting better. I'm going to give you some examples now. I was born with Jupiter opposite Saturn. Now, I've seen many people with Jupiter next to Saturn, with Jupiter at right angle to Saturn. That means Marcia's got it too. Jupiter and Saturn opposite. One's at 6, one's at 14. So there's a lot of play there. That means this particular aspect, the way one planet geometrically lines up with another planet is called an aspect. I primarily work with the hard aspects. They're the most stressful. The conjunction, the opposition, the square. Then the other softer aspects that are major are the sextile, 2 signs away, 1/6 of the circle, the trine, 1/3 of the circle. So I mainly work with those 5 aspects, and there are many, many other, and they're valid, but I just can't take into account everything. And usually when major things happen to you, they happen with the hard aspects. So I mostly work with conjunctions, oppositions, and squares. Now, for example, Jupiter you cannot translate unless you know what the planet means and what it wants. What is its essence like? These guys are just like characters on a stage. They just are. Jupiter, I want to touch it. I want to expand it. I want to put fireworks on it. I want to have fun. I don't want any drag, any bummers around. Get in the van. Let's go. Woo! Let's go have fun. Jupiter. That's what it wants to do. It's what happens when you're around Jupiter people. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. There we got Larry Bird. There we got Bette Midler. There we got Flip Wilson. There we got, who's the guy to burn himself up? Richard Pryor. I mean, they're fun-loving people. The guy had his late-night talk show. What's his name? Jon Stewart's triple Sagittarius. When you're with these people, they're just fun-loving. They're fun-loving. They laugh. People around them laugh. So Jupiter is an energy that wants to have fun. It doesn't want to think about what it can't do. Can't stand to think about what it can't do. Thinks about what it can do. All right. That's one energy. It's in everybody's chart somewhere, and it's in a sign, and it's in a house. Remember, when a planet's in a sign or a house, the sign tells what type of energy it is. It's kind of like a Ford or Chevy, Chrysler, Oldsmobile, but still a car. The house it's in tells me where is that energy expressed in your life. Houses are determined purely by the birth time. Houses in myself, in my money, in my stuff, in my children, in my mind, in my marriage, in my sex life, in my job. The houses are the fields of life where these energies get expressed. Now, for example, Saturn is the planet that's really seen as the opposite of Jupiter. And the reason I bring these two up is there are 5, hello Marilyn, there are 5 personal planets: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. They move very fast. They have a lot to do with the shape of our personality. The 2 planets in the middle are social planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Beyond Saturn, Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the outer planets. So Saturn is about cool it, be smart, don't waste your money, tighten your belt. Jupiter, unloosen your belt, put the money down, let's spin that wheel. Saturn, don't spin that wheel, save the money. You just won a bunch of money, put it in your pocket, go home. Jupiter, all right, you won the money, you're on vacation, spend it. So they're really opposing voices. But they're 2 critical parts of you. Now, for example, and what I'm getting at are the people that say things to me like, oh, I'm having my Saturn return, it's going to be a bad year. Oh, is next year going to be bad like 2017 was? Oh, I've got Pluto on my moon. It's going to be terrible for 2 years, right? No, it's not right. For example, if you have Jupiter opposite Saturn, and Marcia and I have it, and both of our Jupiters are very strong in our chart, and both of our Saturns are very strong because we're both Capricorns. Okay, we both have Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter in Aries is, woo, let's go. Every time I've known Marcia since 1972, I brought up a suggestion, want to do this? Sure, let's go. There's never a thought about it. We just go, we do it. Impulsive, just like Jupiter in Aries is. Wants to have fun, we'll figure it out along the way. Very anti-Capricorn type thinking. Across the zodiac is Saturn. Saturn, well, I'm not sure. Can we afford it? Well, can we look at the schedule and what time we got to start? Oh, I gotta take my medicine with me. Oh, I've got to stop and I got to rest and got to call somebody. And the Jupiter just can't stand things being a drag, and Saturn can't stand things being impulsive. But yet we're born with Jupiter opposite Saturn. That does not mean that we have a problem. What it means is and it's going to blow your mind, your Jupiter is where you want it, and your Saturn is where you want it. I'm going to repeat that. I don't care what planets you have. Sun, Saturn, Neptune conjunct, they're exactly where you want them. It's not possible for them to be 1 degree different, right, Elke? Right. What it's saying is that I'm coming in this lifetime, and let's translate what the books say about Jupiter opposite Saturn. Well, you're really going to be confused because every time you want to go spend money, you're going to feel bad and you're going to want to tighten your belt. And every time you want to tighten your belt, you're going to feel bad and feel greedy and feel selfish and being a bummer. Let's have more fun. And this voice of expand, contract, back and forth is never going to stop in you, is it? And if you get a bad astrologer or a bad author, you're going to believe this stuff that you got this curse on you. But what's really happening is your Jupiter is in a place where it is, and so is Saturn. And what it's really saying is, when I speak, I'm not going to ever speak by myself without Saturn chipping in. You are not going to do a solo, Elke. You're not going to do a solo, Suzanne. When your Jupiter wants to speak, I'm coming on stage with you, Saturn. This is how you scoped it out that you needed it to be in this lifetime. So maybe it means in the past, what I'm finding is in the past lifetime, your Jupiter had too much rain. It got free. It was, wow, what's the problem with Jupiter? It's excessive. It promises too much. It gets spread too thin. It promises and doesn't deliver. Okay, so maybe in this lifetime, you kind of embarrassed by what your Jupiter is, so you put Saturn opposite it this lifetime to check it, just to check it. And I happen to like the fact, Marcia, one's at 6, one's at 14. That's 8 degrees apart. That's a lot of orb. And I cut the orb off after 9 degrees. So I call it an opposition at 8.5 degrees, but it's a weak opposition. Now, if that Jupiter-Saturn were at the same degree, 12 degrees, then you got a problem. See? This is where I have to be very careful because I'm talking to 5, 6, 7 people. This is going to be on YouTube. Who knows, somebody in Middle Africa might be watching this, and they might have Jupiter opposite Saturn, and they look, and it's at opposite same degree. Don't freak out over one thing, okay? So I have to be very careful how I say stuff. So I use the word can a lot, and that's why I videotape my readings. You told my wife to leave me. Oh, yeah? Let's go back on the videotape and show me where I said that. Huh? I don't care. You told her to leave me. I was no good. Let's go back on the videotape. And let's show the whole thing. You tell me where I said that. That's why we videotape, and that's why today, when the doctor takes you into the room, ladies, he's taking another woman in with him. And all this sexual harassment stuff that's going on, Miss Harris. So, in the case of Marcia and I with Jupiter opposite Saturn, it simply means that in this lifetime, when my Jupiter gets enthused and wants to go do something, I'm going to have Saturn there saying, well, remember now, it's all going to be a picnic. When you get there, it's going to be work. There's going to be work involved. You might want to give it another thought. Just a little bit of care, not repressive. And then likewise, when the Saturn speaks, Saturn says, well, it's going to be hard work and it's going to be tough and we're going to have to buckle down. And Jupiter says, well, let's not get all heavy about it. Let's keep it light. So that can be a healthy balance between two planets. It can be a healthy balance. The tighter the orb, the more difficult it becomes because they start becoming too close to each other on stage. Okay? And you can't get any individuation when they're that close. Okay? It's just too tight. Another example. Say you got Pluto up. Say you got Pluto next to your moon. A lot of people have Pluto next to their moon. I don't care what sign it's in. I don't care what your moon is doing, you have just turned into a Scorpio. Because Pluto rules Scorpio, it has such a scorpionic flavor that when it's next to the moon by transit or by birth, your moon is picking up a great scorpionic flavor, no matter whether your moon is in Aries or Taurus, whatever. So what those two are saying is, whenever I'm on stage and I'm expressing my emotional needs, I'm the moon, Pluto's right there. And the moon starts to, a common moon thing is to start to feel sorry for itself, or start to feel unloved, or nobody wants me, everybody's ignoring me. Well, Pluto doesn't put up with that. Pluto doesn't allow whining. It doesn't allow feeling sorry for yourself. So I don't care what your sun sign is or your moon sign, just your moon being next to Pluto, it picks up a great Scorpio quality. Now, then you have to think, well, I just gained a lot of Scorpio essence. How does that mix with the rest of my chart? So it's just another factor. So the people I've seen, I'm not going to go into detail because people memorize detail, and people are looking for curses in their chart. People are looking for reasons that they can fail, because then they don't have to take responsibility for anything. They do. Most people do. Sometimes charts are a mixture of energy that are so difficult that I can pretty much tell, and I don't even like saying it, I can pretty much tell this soul has no way to breathe. And if this soul poops out at age 4 or age 11 and dies, I can't say that's a drag. I can say it's sad. I can say it's sad for the family. I cannot say that it's a drag because I don't know what the soul needs. And that's honest. That's what Nick was talking to us about. Nick Aronis was talking to us about, we don't know. And that's why I was saying don't judge, not because it's naughty to judge, not because it's in your rule book not to judge, but because every time you judge, you're wrong. Every time. You're always wrong. And what ends up happening, what I do to you, I do to me. So if I put bars around you, those same bars end up holding me in. So I got moon next to Pluto. Well, what does that mean? Well, you got to understand, what does Pluto do when it's next to something? The moon is very hard to talk about. The moon is your emotions. It's the kind of lifestyle you have. Are you laid back? Are you comfortable? Pluto is, are you intense? Are you getting into things? Do you care about stuff deeply? Do you have great passion? Well, if your moon is sitting there in lighthearted Aries, or it's in lighthearted Gemini, it's no longer lighthearted because it's next to Pluto. But it is lighthearted. See? It drives you crazy, astrology. It is lighthearted, but it isn't. And your experience with these people is you'll say, you know, I'm with that Mark guy, and sometimes he's just lighthearted, but sometimes I think it's lighthearted, but it's not lighthearted. And you're sitting there scratching your head, and you're going to scratch your head, because that's the way his energy is. But the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, the wisdom of whoever allowed your chart to manifest thusly, is beyond reproach. It knows what it's doing. Even charts that are horrible, charts that are really bad, I've seen them. They can't breathe, they're violent, they don't have any patience, they can't think clearly. Charts that are just messed up, and you don't see very many. Most charts have a lot of freedom and way out. You do see charts now and then that they really look terrible, and I'm not going to itemize it for you because somebody out there has got them, and they're going to put the curse on themselves. I can't say that the chart is horrible in the ultimate sense, because I don't know what they need. I don't know what they need. the best experience in their life might be getting raped in the middle of Central Park. It might be. And then what happens to that soul down the road later from such an awful experience might turn them into some kind of superhero that helps other women or other men in these shelters, and might have to do with changing the laws legislatively. We just don't know. We just don't know. Okay, but the thing is this: when you're analyzing your chart, even when you're with a pretty good astrologer, always take a couple boxes of Morton salt with you. I don't care how good they are, even me. Take salt, put salt all over me. These aspects are very vague. These archetypes have many, many complex sides. And they're hard to translate, and the archetypes are changing all the time. So we're learning. Other examples. My son has Mercury trine to Uranus. And the trines, I've tested for a long time, the trines are almost always very positive. Almost always. A conjunction will be plus and minus. A square will be plus and minus. But a sextile is largely positive at 60 degrees. And a trine is largely positive. Well, my son picks up the brilliance of Uranus trine to his Mercury, and his mind just learns things as fast. Just really, really super quick. He just remembers things, and he can analyze things super, super fast, which is a quality of Uranus. It's not the Mercury in Leo. It's the Uranus that's feeding universal energy into that Mercury. And by aspect of 120 degrees, the two planets get along fine. Now, what's negative about that? Anytime Mercury and Uranus combine, there'll be some negative, but with the trine, even the trine, you don't get much negativity. The negativity is you get a little fanatical, you get a little bit restless or obsessive about your certain subject, a little bit of a know-it-all, but I don't think that it comes from the Mercury-Uranus trine. Okay, other examples in people's charts. Here's one that I see an inordinate number of times. Everywhere I look, I see people with Venus conjunct Saturn. I see tons and tons of people with Venus next to Saturn. Venus square Saturn. Venus opposite Saturn. Well, Venus is that ability to be pleasant, to be Libra-like. Come on in, let me feed you. Come on in, can I make you comfortable? How are you? Being very pleasant. Boy, you look nice today. And Saturn is be careful, be careful, be careful, because two planets have got to do with letting things in to your heart. Venus and the moon. Those are the doorways into you. And if your Venus and moon are blocked, you got trouble letting life in. And if you got trouble letting life in, you've got problems. Because if it isn't coming in, it can't get in there and it can't get out. So why do I see so many people with Venus Saturn? Why do I see people date 6 people in a row that have Venus Saturn? Why do I see people date 6 partners in a row that have Venus Saturn conjunctions? And I'm not even exaggerating. Well, the Venus Saturn is obviously what's called a construct, where in the past lifetime, the Venus was too open. Come on in, sure. Come on in, we'll feed you. Come on in, sure. We'll give you a place to stay tonight. We'll give you some clothes. Sure, come on in. And usually that leads to trouble because you're too open. So the person comes back in the next lifetime and says, with Saturn, I want you to keep a check on my Venus Saturn and make sure the Venus doesn't get over-compromising. which is the problem with Venus. Keep a guard on it. Keep a look on it. So when I start to open the treasures of the family to my guests, make sure I kind of keep the door shut and don't talk about it too quickly. Maybe after I'm married 10 years, I could talk about it, but not on my first date. So the Saturn is there as a chaperone. But what often happens with it, is I always say, I'll let Venus, Saturn, I'll let you into the house, but I'll let you into the foyer, but you're not getting in the house. And I see so many people with Venus, Saturn. I'll let you into the foyer, we'll sit and we'll have cookies and tea, and look out the door, and isn't it pretty, but you're not getting a tour. You're not going inside. You're not getting in to my real heart. So what I found, and I'm not sure 100%, but I'm sure 90%. What I found with people that draw others with Venus, Saturn to them have experiences where I couldn't, tell me what your relationships were like the last 15 years, just in general. I just asked that the other day. Client says back to me, well, I don't know why, but I kept picking people who were not available to me emotionally. Well, that's not a curse. That's not the universe being bad to you. That's not the universe saying, well, let's make sure her love life doesn't matter. That's a person who wants it that way. Why would you want the person next to you that you're intimately dating, sleeping next to, maybe even married to? Why would you want them to be non-available? Well, because then you don't have to become available. Because somebody told me a while back, and they're really right. It came from a Hopi Indian saying. There are three things you need in life. You may agree or not. It's a Hopi Indian saying. There are three things you need in life. Air, water, somebody to blame. Air and water, somebody to blame. Because it's so valuable, I got somebody to blame. It ain't me. Well, that's how the ego thinks, and boy, it sure doesn't help us. But anyhow, I honestly see it a lot, and I see when the client starts to make a lot of growth and they get past that need for codependency, the Venus-Saturn people stop showing up in their life. They just do. So, let me give you an example. The Venus-Saturn, when it's too close, when it's 1 degree apart or it's in opposition 1 degree apart, when it's too close, the Venus can barely even open before the Saturn goes shut. Well, you know, I kind of like, oh, you didn't like that guy. Well, I kind of thought he was, oh, you didn't like that. And it might even bring a parent into your life that plays that role. Tell me about the boy you're dating. Oh, he's no good. Oh, you can't trust them. So the Saturn is trapping shut so quickly that the Venus is not even getting into its nature to even open. And what ends up happening there, the Venus stops trying. It just stops trying. It just stops trying because it would rather not try than to try and then get shot down. So when the Venus-Saturn is a little bit further apart, 7 degrees, 6 degrees apart, you still have something going on like that, but at least you got a chance to go out on a date, give the person a taste, what they like, talk to them a little bit, and then the Saturn part, you said, I better think about this. It's more relaxed. It's not as frantic. The other thing that's really critical in the chart is if any of those planets line up with the angles. Let me show you somebody's chart here, just to give you an example. I'm not doing an entire reading. Let me show you Mark's chart, since we've not seen him in a while. We'll pick on Mark. Okay. That's obviously the one that I didn't put up. We wonder whether you were in China or somewhere, Mark. You're live now. Let me get Mark R. Okay, there you are. Okay, here's this chart. Let me get it so where you can see it. All right. What was I talking about? 2 planets that line up. Oh, okay. All right. When a planet is near a angle, here are the 4 angles: the ascendant, the descendant, the nadir, and the midheaven. They're in all charts. They're relatively like this. They get more and more obtuse when you get near the poles. They're not always, the houses are determined by it. The houses are never 30 degrees, rarely. They're different sizes, as you can see. The signs of the zodiac are 30 degrees each. The houses are different. But you can see the Uranus is extremely strong just because it's at that ascendant. The Neptune is very strong because it's right by the nadir. The Sun is very strong. So no matter what you see in the chart, the Sun and Uranus and Neptune are the 3 major players in the chart because they're angular. They're by the angles. When you look at this sector, the first sector, the most powerful part of that sector is the beginning. Then a planet gets weaker as it is placed further on through the sector. Neptune is very dominant over this sector of development. Chiron is very strong over this sector of relationships. The Sun and Venus are very strong over this sector of business and the world. I need to check my microphones here. I'm getting a little bit of feedback on Mark, but not too bad. So, going back to Mark, even though Uranus looks like it's by itself, Uranus is extremely strong because it's almost 3 degrees. The ascendant is 351. So Mark is very much like Uranus and Leo. So I don't care if he's in Aries, which he is, he's extremely Aquarian. He's extremely Leonine. He's Aquarian and Leonine because this T-square of Sun, Venus, opposite Neptune, is sending all of its energy to that Uranus. So he's obviously brilliant, and he's obviously really far ahead of his time. And we see the Uranus is very strong. Now, I'm not going to spend my time doing this because it'll get us off track. In Mark's past life chart, which I call the 12th harmonic, which I also call the spiritual transcript. For whatever reason, Mark was probably very far ahead of his time. And when I do have thousands of these readings, one of the things that doesn't float very well with past lives is people who are far ahead of their time because the times were backward, at least it seems that way. They were suppressed. They weren't allowed to speak. They couldn't smile. But yet they had this knowledge. They were very advanced, very colorful. You don't hold down Uranus and Leo. It's very expressive. Uranus and Leo is, I got something to say. Let me go on Broadway and sing about it. Very expressive. But you look at Mark, and Mark's very quiet. He's not Uranus and Leo. He's got the Sun, Venus at the top of the chart. That's very expressive and out there and photographic and doing dances and playing guitars and singing. But you look at the bottom of the chart and there's Neptune. And Neptune governs all that. And Neptune softens all that. And Neptune doesn't like us being like that. Neptune doesn't like us being individualistic. Neptune doesn't like us to be on stage by ourselves. Neptune only understands the oneness. It's a big cloud. So it's a mixture of things. So the woman in 1971 said, oh, wait till you're 28. You're going to get your butt kicked. Why? I'm green. Why? Oh, you're going to have a Saturn return. Oh, it's going to be nasty. Oh. What happened my Saturn return? I was a filmmaker. My girlfriend up and just left me. Out of nowhere, just picked up and moved to New Orleans. And I wasn't making any more films. I had to go back to school and learn computers. And once I did, everything picked up again. It was chapter 2 of my life. But it was by no means catastrophic. But when you're not going anywhere physically, in terms of reality, Saturn stops you, puts you on a different track. So when they tell you these different things, there's a degree of truth to them, and there's a great degree of not fully understanding, because as you see, it's so complicated. Complicated. Let's go back to Mark's chart for a minute. Then I'm going to open the phones up here in a minute for your questions, because I'm sure you have many. Let's go back to Mark here. Let me try to give you an example of what I'm talking about out of Mark's chart. Okay, this is a tremendous example here. Sun opposite Neptune. This is by far the most important thing in his chart. Sun opposite Neptune. I'll tell you precisely what this means, especially since I'm doing the 12th harmonic. He's in this lifetime with the Sun in Leo, with Sun in Aries. He's here to talk about it and say what he's got to say. And I know what I'm telling you. And the world's going to end. And listen to me and come to my church. Bah, I'm telling you. Right? I'm confident. I know what I'm saying. And Neptune's down there saying, no, shh, shh, don't be saying stuff like that. Don't be saying stuff like that. That's not in sync with God. That's not really what's going on. That's really not what's best for people. Then the voice gets loud. Then the voice gets soft. So this fight goes on forever. How close is it? Sun, Neptune, 26 and 1, 5 degrees away. So it's a half, 5 degrees away. It's strong enough. It's going up and down the midheaven, so it's really strong. So it's very clear to me, this simple. He took this lifetime to work out the ancient fight that he's had between self and ego. Because there's, as you know, as a spiritual student, there's so much crap revolving around the word ego and the word karma. I mean, it's like we all got so much garbage that we got to clean up, and we're all so bad, and we all got to throw everything out. We all got to go wash up, and we got to all go with juice and eat organically and do all these pranayams and all these prayers. So what Mark is working on in this lifetime, and I'm here to tell you, especially with the rise of Eris now, Mark is making great advances now. And I'm going to go to him just a second. He's making advances and starting to see. I'm getting a sound. There we go. Hello, Erica.
Hi.
Hi there, dear. Okay, what it is confusion. In the past lifetime, things were confused when he was being programmed with dogma. He was taught that to brush his teeth was ego-centered. He was taught to the ladies taking their black veil off their head was ego-centered. It's just an overreaction that so many people had to the Old Testament, which is still ruling people, and you see people doing goofy stuff over the rules in the Old Testament. So what Mark is learning is he doesn't need to suppress himself. That if he allows himself to express himself, the odds of it being altruistic, and the odds of it being life supportive go greater the more he doesn't hassle himself. The more he hassles himself and expresses himself, the more the self-expression turns mean or gets jarred or gets aggravated or gets distorted because he's got inner stirrings. So he's learning in this life that no matter what I got to say, it's going to be okay. People ask me, how do I do my show? I tell them, I have no idea. I have no idea. I know astrology pretty well, and I start talking. And I would not allow this years ago. I had to work through this and work through it and allow it to come out. And eventually you start to learn that what's coming out is good stuff because I have concern of people in my voice, in my thoughts. So I would say, Mark, let's hear from you. I'm going to unmute you. If I can here. What's going on here? Mercury, yeah, Mercury is retrograde today. Mark, what are your thoughts on what I've been saying?
Well, I would say the latter part of life has been a turn inward to stillness and a move away from ego. So that part was on target. I think when it comes to expression, with the reduction of ego, there's just not as much need to express in general.
Right.
So that when an expression does come out, it probably is pretty poignant.
Well, I think that's very wise. And what I found out about that is that usually, not always, usually when we're expressing, who are we talking to?
Ourselves.
We're talking to ourselves. Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with expressing yourself. And there's nothing wrong with being Ethel Merman and getting out on the stage and belling out that song. My mother was my mother was an opera singer. She was like Ethel Merman. She would just boom and let that big voice out, and she would sing at the local theaters. So I grew up listening to opera and Mario Alonso and people in the hallways going, oh, shh, oh. So I learned to be quiet when that was on, or Perry Mason. But you definitely have the idea. So in your next, I love Mario Alonso. So in your next lifetime, you won't need to make the Sun-Neptune issue so strong, because Sun-Neptune is the ego, Sun, and Neptune, which is the non-ego. You won't need to make it so aggressively opposed to each other, because you're working through that. And what I'm finding with people is, number one, I'm finding a lot of people bring dogma with them in this lifetime. Because when I look into the past lives, I don't see the current state of houses, cars, business, countries. I see their spiritual state. And I see what they're concerned about. And therefore, when you start to defeat the fight of ego versus non-ego, what happens is the Sun-Neptune opposition starts to behave like a trine. And the Sun-Neptune trine is beautiful. Beautiful because the person has a strong sense of self, but that beautiful sense of non-self pours through them at the same time. You know, they're the ones you talk about, movie stars, often, because those are the ones we study, beside these ugly politicians. Oh my God, can we please get some politicians that we can look at with it 1/8 of our eyeball or something? I'm just so poisoned by looking at these certain politicians. Anyhow, that's my thing. The point is, your sun, an opposition is not a curse. A square is not a curse. I've seen so many thousands of people be successful with Sun square Saturn. your main planet, square Saturn, which is the planet that's supposed to stop you, go read the books. Oh, he won't be successful. Oh, he'll be too hard on himself. Oh, he won't have the opportunities. Blah, 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 blah. Go look at Einstein. Go look at Darwin. They're full of Sun Saturn. Because when you have inner tension, it drives you to try to solve it. The most boring people, oftentimes very nice. I've known a lot of really nice people that are really boring. They don't have anything going on in their charts. There's no interesting squares. There's no interesting oppositions. And inside their mind and their heart, things are just kind of flowing along, and they kind of bore me. Now, on the other extreme, if somebody has a chart that looks like chicken scratch, you know, usually there's just too much going on, too much disintegration. So I think what I will do is I will let the computer run here, let the camera run. We're continuing to record and upload tomorrow onto YouTube. In case any of you need to join us or would like to join us on any Thursday night, you can do so with a camera on your computer, or else you can also use the camera on your smartphone or your tablet. And if you're doing the latter, you will need to go to the App Store and pick up the app called Zoom, which is free. And you can join us any Thursday night, 8 o'clock, live and free. And we're glad to see you. And if not, they're always rebroadcast in their entirety on Friday. So I would like to stop now. If you want to go into some of your own squares, etc., I will be glad to, but I'm not going to be labored. I'm going to tell you what I think, because my style is to try to give everybody a turn. By the way, if you do have questions for Astrology Unplugged, you are invited to send me a private email at rick@starself.com, rick@starself.com, which is like yourself, myself, star self, which is my main website. So it's open now. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to get your chart up. Yes, Suzanne, go ahead, dear.
Yeah, Rick, yeah, I've been wondering about this for a while. If you could put out a chart and show the correlation between comments that you've made about my life, about how I do these different things, about how I just got done doing fun things. So it makes me feel a little diminished, like, wait a minute, I have a master's of science, you know? And the Jungian talk I did last week was not fun, you know?
What do you mean by diminished?
Well, you always publicly portray me as doing all these things, like I'm scattered. And then you always say things like, oh, you do so many fun things. I'm not meaning
scattered. I'm saying you're multi-talented. Don't twist my words. I'm saying you're multi-talented.
Well, that's how I interpreted when you said you do so many things, so I don't know. That's kind of vague, But anyway, I'm not complaining about it. And also I want to just make a comment that I don't think that anybody can make a blanket statement that anybody who's expressing themselves, it's coming from ego. We're going into a new type of consciousness where people are expressing themselves and they realize there's no pie. And so they're coming directly from source.
Yeah.
And so, so I just wanted to make that comment.
I agree completely. And by no means do I. Here's the reason I see you as scattered. If your Saturn was not here, I would say scattered. Not because of your moon Uranus, not because you're a Libra, not because of the Leo, not because of the Mars and Pisces, not because of the Libra, but because the T-square to Neptune. T-square to Neptune, you're going to get scattered. And thank God you get scattered, because if you didn't get scattered, the tension from Moon, Uranus, and Chiron, Moon, Uranus, and Chiron, all that tension that keeps pouring out through Neptune would not have a vessel. It would not have a directive, escape valve. But that is a scattered sample. But when you have a very strong Saturn, and you do because of two things, because Saturn is extremely strong in Scorpio, and Saturn's at 28, and your ascendant is 25. So your Saturn, you might get scattered for a few seconds, but your Saturn very quickly lassos it. When every time I'm talking about you, I'm talking about this Mars. There's so much power going through. Mars is the bucket handle here. I'm always amazed at how many different things you're into.
But
That's
Rick,
all.
I'm not really into different things.
Well, we don't need to go there. The point is,
Well, we do need to go there. It's a public statement. I'm not into a lot of different things.
well, I see you involved in a whole lot of things, and I've known you for about 5 years, and you go to this meeting and this meeting, you talk to these people, and you're into this, you talk to them, and to me, it's many things. And to me,
my life has been all very metaphysical my whole life. So,
okay.
it just makes sense that as a 62-year-old, I'm helping and owning one of the biggest metaphysics made-ups in town. And so, that's metaphysical. The Starseed Nation, that's metaphysical.
Mm-hmm.
It's all within the same realm of metaphysics.
And underneath that umbrella, I see you involved in many different subjects, like I am. So that's where I'm coming from. And it by no means is an insult or a put down.
Wow, thank you.
Okay, now you asked me to tell you why do I see your chart the way I do. Okay, first of all, I've got a Libra person, okay? Never mind the fact that got this brand new story, brand new, that you were born with a sun opposite Eris. That's a big deal. And I don't know much about it, but it's a big deal because she's new on the site. She's 2 degrees from opposite your sun. And we also know that she's somehow related to being some kind of ruler of Libra. And we know that she brings out that other part of Libra, which is battling for fairness. And you're always writing about, why are people doing this in the world? Why is the government doing this? Well, this isn't fair, and that's not fair. So it's very Erisian. So I'm not going to talk much about Eris yet, because I'm still learning. Now, we know we got a Libra. Now, without even going any further, we got a Libra female. You got to start from scratch. When you got a Libra female, you automatically think about them being pleasant, being pretty clothes, being pretty things around them, being pleasant, always educated, nice job, very much socially present, socially tactful. But what you have to watch with Libra is, are they overcompensating? Do they lose themselves in relationships because they think their need for a relationship is much stronger than they need? So I automatically take the weak part of Libra and I throw it out the window because I see how strong your Mars is. But I have to start with you with that question. But I automatically throw the Libra out because you're not weak. You have a strong sense of self. Libras don't have a strong sense of self. Cancers don't have a strong sense of self. Pisces don't have a strong sense of self. You got to get it elsewhere. And you get it from Mars, from Leo, from Leo, from Leo, from Leo, from Leo, from Saturn. So I by no means see you as a weak Libra. But I have to start building my image in my mind as I put you through my outline. So I start to see, well, we've got a woman here. This is really good to do this because it shows you how I think it through. We've got a woman here who's Libra, and she's got strong Libra because Mercury is there, and she's got tremendous amount of Leo. Those two signs are very harmonious. They're both very educated. They're very vocal. They love being around people. They love to express themselves. They love pretty things. You would be a very good feng shui person, decorating, those kind of things. Those kind of things are very much Leo energy. Now, we got a little bit of a conflict here because the Mars is in charge, but the Mars is not really Martian. It's Neptunian. So even though your Mars is Mars, and it does give you testosterone, and it gives you a maleness, it is softened by being in Pisces, which can be really good. Because the Pisces is saying, well, let's not get too self-oriented. The Mars itself is going to just go do what it wants, get what it wants. But when it's in Pisces, it's not going to do that. So this can be a bit of a fight, but by now it's so strong you're probably really used to it. And this gives you a very tactful way of using your Mars energy, beside the fact that you're that tactful sign. Now, moreover, than all these things we've discussed, moreover, the biggest concern is the Saturn and Scorpio. Saturn and Scorpio is very tough. I've seen many of them. What do we see with yours? 28 degrees. It's trine to your moon. It's trine to Uranus. And that's very good because this gives you really strong emotional sustenance. I'm sorry, emotional stamina. Emotional stamina. Moon trine Saturn is very tough. Moon trine Saturn in Scorpio from Leo is very strong. That means no matter how many bombs I shoot from my ship to your ship, no matter how many dents I put in the hull of your ship, you just keep on sailing. It's tough. It's a tough sign. Okay? So that's good. But the problem with Saturn and Scorpio, and why it's there at the base of your chart, the problem with it is you've got to, or at least I've got to check out and find out, Saturn and Scorpio is very self-critical. Saturn and Scorpio is very tough on the self. It's very demanding. Now, the Leo stuff is not demanding of the self. The Leo stuff is very accepting of the self. The Libra stuff is not self-critical. So the Saturn gets softened by that. But yet, we find out that one of the main things in this lifetime, in all your relationships, here's you, here's your relationships. This line is all about all your relationships being squared by Saturn. That means that forget the Libra part of you. When you start to have a relationship of any kind, forget the Libra part. You become the Scorpio. The Scorpio is much stronger than the Libra. And that means the Libra is all ready to see the other side, see the counterbalance. The Scorpio isn't. The Scorpios, don't fool me, I see right through what's going on. Now, this can be really good, and I'll tell you why. Because the Libra can tend to be too soft and too compromising, and the Saturn can be the opposite. So when you end up blending these two, they can be very, very good. But it's not been simple. It's not been simple. And this is probably because of a past life where you had confusion with how much do I give in this relationship? What should I take? Should I give? Should I take? And so you place Saturn. Saturn is usually placed very much in a chart as a chaperone. Okay? And you got to keep it at chaperone and not let it become drill sergeant. Now, does this make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's largely where I see. But then I got other things to see because the chart's so dynamic. The Pluto is extremely powerful. The Pluto is 4 degrees from the ascendant. It's 7 degrees from the Venus. So beside all this Leo stuff, and you got to wonder why is all the Leo stuff in the 12th house? Interesting question. But it's all exactly where it needs to be. But you're extremely scorpionic because of 2 reasons. The Pluto and the Saturn. So I worry about Libra people when I read for them. Libra is a weak sign. Libra is a very strong sign, but they think they're weak. And they're a lot stronger than they think. And that's because they need supported by other planets. But not your chart. Your chart has a lot of buttressing from all the strong Leo, from the Pluto rising, from Leo rising, from the Sun in the second house. Jupiter in Virgo is strong, etc., etc. Now, on top of all that stuff, we could talk another 2 weeks about the Sun being opposite Eris. And what we know about Eris. And we've had now our third program on this show about the rise of the divine feminine. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, but the different things that you're talking about, there's really two. There's metaphysics and activism.
Okay.
Those are the only two things I do. Now, how that plays out, it plays out in articles I write that are published.
Yes.
It comes out in art. It comes out in, a lot of different things, but there's really two basic things. So whenever you said you're doing all these things, I could never put anything together as to, like, what is he talking about? And
well,
so
I find you're just so capable of talking to a janitor or a CEO or a councilman. You're just capable of being flexible and talking to all these people much like I do on any level. Now, the political activism, where's that coming from?
Eris.
Huh?
Eris.
It most likely is Eris, yes. Now, when you hear political activation, it's usually Jupiter. Now, let's take a look at Jupiter, and I really don't think it's Jupiter that much because it has a 4-degree opposition to Mars, and that can be social activism. It also can be somebody who is very active physically, like bike riding, exercising. I think the Pluto rising has a lot to do with it, too. Remember, when you dig to your core, all of us, this is where the sun sign does come in. Your core is you are a social being. Libras are very social. Whenever I get a Libra answer from somebody, they always tell me what's wrong with society, how we can fix society. And those are good, valuable answers. But they usually don't talk at a universal level or at a subconscious level. They usually talk at a social level. Now you can do all those things because you got a strong Pluto, you got a very strong Neptune, you got a strong Uranus. Okay, we got 4 outer planets that are strongly represented. Eris, Uranus by the moon, Pluto rising, Neptune at a T-square. So this is what separates you greatly from most typical Libra women. Most typical Libra women are worried about how they look, how educated they are, what their clothes look like, how they look to the rest of society, and keeping up with the Joneses is something that's very slippery, but not with you. So the Eris, I think the Eris is just as strong as your Pluto. These two are both, and it's Saturn. These are 3 very heavy statements. You are going to toe the line, which means you're going to stay glued to your principles. You care, and I see that a lot in your writings. You're saying, well, look at these people are getting killed. These people are getting starved. This little boy just got shot. Doesn't anybody care? Doesn't anybody care? I've been liking your messages for years now, and, sad to see that I like it. Why doesn't anybody else? And I think other people just simply don't want to be bothered. It just shakes them up. Well, what I see in your chart is you don't worry about whether you're bothered. And when you don't worry about whether you're bothered, means you have power from outer planets.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think that connection to Eris was there before I knew Eris's name.
Of course.
And I get Barbara G. Walker's book in 1997, And so, yeah.
Well, that's why we have to retrofit Eris, and that's why it's difficult. We have to go back in time and say, well, what was Eris doing then? What was it doing in 1940? What did it do in my birth? And now we got some others coming on right after. But this is definitely Eris's time now. This is Eris's time now. Yes, Elkie wants to say something. Go ahead, dear. Go ahead.
I just read on the side that Marianne Williams is considering running for president.
Yeah, I saw that last year. And well, she sure beats the ones that we have to choose from now.
What party is she going with?
Democratic nomination. She said she's formed a committee to explore the possibility of seeking the Democratic nomination in 2020.
If you're not aware of Marianne Williamson, she is known for being a very strong writer and promoter of the Course in Miracles.
That would be fantastic.
She's a Cancer. She's very smart, very bright, very lovely. She has a wonderful book called Power of Love. What is it? Return to Love. I didn't care a lot for her second book, but the Return to Love is excellent because she really puts into play the principles of love out of the Course in Miracles. Okay, very good dialogue so far. Thank you. I'm wondering, thank you, Suzanne. I'm wondering what is on Miss Erica's mind. You're not near the fires, are you?
Yeah, I've had to wear a mask going outside because I have asthma and it really upsets my lungs. And we haven't had wind to push it out, so it just went down south. So San Jose and San Francisco and Marin County have a lot of smoke, and I just came back from
Are you near San Francisco?
Yeah, I'm like 15 miles away.
So you're not far from Susan that's in our group.
She's in Walnut Creek. We're about 20 miles away going east.
Oh, okay, so you're pretty close. Well,
so she's getting a lot of smoke too.
I'm so sorry. How are things in your area?
We're just shocked and saddened and upset about, what's going to happen going into the future, because each year it just keeps getting worse, and we need complete different way of dealing with this because it's not acceptable. There's still 100 people that have not been found. They could all be dead, and they've already found almost 50 people dead.
Well, we're aware of it across the country, and we're sick of watching the administration play it down as if it's not climate change.
We're sick of watching it in Canada. I'm just telling you, everybody is sick. The world is sick about it.
Well, my feeling is this: if it is climate change and you battle against it and find out it wasn't climate change, then your exercises are not in vain. Because I'll tell you what, around this house in the middle of Appalachia, we didn't see hardly any birds all summer, any moths, any butterflies, just any bees. Things are really, really changing here. Mark, yes, go ahead, sir.
Well, I follow the climate change quite a bit, and I've learned more about participants and political activism. And the challenge that I put to everyone is what's going to lead to change. And the reason I say it that way is because the amount of change required to actually manifest a change is so great that most people aren't willing to sacrifice what needs to be sacrificed.
And that's why we got to speak up. We got to make noise. And a lot of us Neptune-like people, most people in groups like this are Neptunian, because that means we have our eyes on the stars. And then central to being Neptunian is you don't want to make waves, and you want to do it in a peaceful way. But BS, it's time to make waves, because if it's not a fire in California, then it's a flood in North Carolina, whatever. Nobody can afford it. So we need to speak up. Yeah, go ahead, Elke.
Germany is so bad. Like things weed themselves out though too. They come to the surface on their own. Germany has had such a severe drought over the summer. There has hardly been any rain since the middle of last year. The rivers have dried up. They cannot transport the barges. The fuel cannot be transported anymore. My old boyfriend, he's a dentist in Germany, and he emails me all the time, and he says, it is so bad, the refineries and the rivers are closing. They can't get to them. They're shut down. There's a fuel shortage. The government is now releasing excess fuel, and the fuel prices are rising so exponentially that a liter of gas costs almost $3 US. So there are severe consequences you just don't hear about. You don't get the big picture of what's happening in all the countries. But grave consequences.
Well, to wrap things up with tonight's show, thank you, Elke. I want to wrap this all into one thing. First of all, be very careful if you think you've got a curse in your chart. Get your chart looked at by somebody that knows what they're doing, and there aren't many. And if you don't want me to do it, I could find you somebody. Okay? Don't sit there with a big misunderstanding about your chart. We looked at Suzanne's chart just now. We saw lots of complexity, and we ended up seeing a very powerful personality. Well, it's not simple to be a powerful personality, and there are challenges. And when the transits come through, certain parts of those challenges get louder than others. Secondly, the thing I want to say is, I don't know what this show is about. This show is a bunch of friends talking about astrology, and in 2 weeks we'll talk about ayahuasca. I'm just trying to bring things to you that you might want to talk about, you might want to think about. But the biggest thing I'm saying is we know the answers. We know the answers. We know what the problems are. We certainly went to the polls, and thank God so many women got elected to the House. We gotta keep voting. We've got to keep moving. We've got to keep talking. Keep promoting what Eris is doing. Tell people what Eris is about, because these people can feel it. They know it's something, they just don't know. And be firm. People ask me, what do? I say, I am an astrologer. Oh, I know where the stars are. No, I'm not an astronomer. I'm an astrologer. I tell them. It's time. Not only is it time to quit kissing up and taking it in baby steps, it's also time, I was talking about this yesterday, it's also time to start talking about that little glib thing that we keep in our wallet, which is that pretty little word called oneness. Oh, isn't it cute? We're all part of the oneness. We're all part of the oneness. Put it on your Hallmark card, okay? I'm going to start flinging it. We are part of the oneness, and that means that we all have to start understanding things very differently, just like Nick has taught us. But anyhow, we got a really good group, and I am encouraging all of you to do your thing, because we all have different avenues of strength. You on YouTube, thanks for listening in every week. We will be off next week, so you can enjoy your big fat turkey or whatever it is you're going to eat. I want to be politically correct. Maybe you're going to have a big rice bowl or something. I don't know. But anyhow, thank you all. It's been really good. See you in a couple weeks when we talk about ayahuasca. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody.